Welcome tonight. Governor Nyesom Wike dismisses threat by the PDP leadership against the G5 governors, restates result to announce their next move on the presidential election after due consultations. Governor Kowa says PDP not losing sleep over the G5 agenda. Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State orders clampdown on bandits operating in the state following recent killing of 20 residents in 4 communities in Alkaleri local government area. A Lagos state government files 1-count charge against ASP Drambi Vandi, suspected to have killed Mrs. Bonale Rahim. Chief Magistrate orders remand of suspects in Ikoyi Correctional Center until January 30, 2023.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's stock market outshines its peers, ends the year with about 20% gain despite various headwinds and negative forecast by economic experts.
And on sports news tonight, more tributes pouring from the football world following the death of one of the game's greatest ever players, Pele.
And from Abuja, the nation's capital, President of the Senate says President Buhari will sign the 2023 appropriation bill on Tuesday, 2 days after the National Assembly passed the bill.
And in international news from London, Brazil has woken up to its first day without the footballing legend Pele, who's died at the age of 82.
State Governor Nyesom Wike is still talking tough. This time, he's dismissed a reported threat by the leadership of the People's Democratic Party to sanction the G5 governors if they decide to support another presidential candidate in 2023 other than the party's flag bearer. Governor Wike spoke on the issue during the flag-off of a road project in the state shortly after his return from a trip to the UK, where he reportedly held a meeting with the other G5 governors. He said he's still consulting with his people on the next decision regarding which presidential candidate to support.
My dear people, I just want to tell you that whatever decision I will take, I will let you know. And I cannot take any decision without taking advice from you, is it not? Is it not? So please, allow these newspapers who are standing for one election. All of us will know the party they are supporting. We know the candidate they are supporting. They cannot come out and tell Nigerians the simple truth. Every day telling lies upon lies upon lies upon lies. I'm not one who will go and see somebody and I will hide. Hide for who? Who is that person that will threaten me? He said he will sack me. Go ahead. I'm not worried. You that is sacking, you are worried. Me that will be sacked, am I worried? Try and see how you will survive it.
Governor Wike also recalled how the PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar allegedly rejected an appeal by former President Olusegun Obasanjo for his support for a second term in office.
And you say we are giving condition. What is the condition we are giving? We are giving no condition. But we forget history. In 2002 and 2003, when President Olusegun Obasanjo wanted to run for second tenure, a whole president wanted to run for a second tenure. He knelt down before his vice. He knelt down before his vice presidential candidate, the vice president, and said, "My vice, please allow me to run." You know the condition he gave him? One of the conditions, you know what he gave him? Tony Anini must be sacked as Minister of Works. And Tony Anini must not be the President Campaign Council. Obasanjo obliged and sacked Tony Anini as Minister of Works and removed him from Presidential Council and brought him back to South. And people are talking. This is a president. His own vice giving him condition. A retired general. He knelt down. My vice, please, allow me to run for a second tenure. And he was given conditions. This one, we are not even doing that. We are not saying, sack this one, give what. No. We are only saying, by the constitution of our party, by what the national chairman said, and by what you told me in my house when he came to see me. Now you have gotten the president. We are not fighting about it. We say you have taken, we don't want to fight. Okay, give us the national chairman. And you say, no, we will not listen to people. Don't give us condition. Something that is touching on the foundation of the unity of a country.
Meanwhile, the vice presidential candidate of the PDP and governor of Delta State, Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa, is maintaining that God alone will determine Nigeria's next president, not the action or inaction of the G5 governors. Reacting to the G5 governors' activities with respect to their rumored meeting with the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Tinubu, in London, Governor Okowa, who spoke in Pidgin, boasted that the party will emerge victorious regardless of what he termed as anti-party activities of the governors. He said this in Abo during the PDP campaign rally in Ndokwa East and Ndokwa West local government areas of the state.
And we know say it's not easy to win the election. But God don't talk and say, now we, PDP, they win. Make them not fear. Many things see they happen. And I see they talk about, many people talk about the G5. I know they talk say, now we brothers and sisters, everybody is very important. But waiting God don't talk say go happen, you know, change that. So even for that one they do, probably some of them go fit talk now and say they go support APC. But some will remain with us because they will divide from among themselves. But the real truth say, if you see what thing they happen for ground, me, when I know say me, I get strong political eye. I gentle like this, but I sabi read everything. I know that I can't go to side where you when before I enter somewhere, me and Baba God don't talk finish. You know where would they go? I they take my eye, they see what thing they happen for Nigeria with the Waka. Waiting never they want to. PDP go win the election. The APC and the rest, let's not forget them. Because we know say for this country, the person when APC bring come out for offer, you know good. For that kind of one. Then the other one, when they confuse with people, they talk say Labour Party. Labour Party not get where they go. So make we go explain to them. Them are not best for them. All those ones when they go Labour, make go talk to them, say that they won't waste their vote, make they not waste the vote.
The security now. The governor of Bauchi State, Bala Mohammed, is not mincing words regarding attacks in his state. He has ordered security personnel to shoot at sight bandits terrorizing communities. His directive comes after the recent killing of 20 people by bandits in 4 communities in Akaleri local government area of the state. The governor has visited the communities where some of the victims were reportedly burnt alive. Our correspondent, Hajara Aliyu, has more.
It's a tough terrain heading to Rimi and Bogos communities in remote parts of Algaleri local government area of Bauchi State. The poor road network makes movement difficult in the area. Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State is leading the entourage to the community, and they had to cross rivers to get there. The delegation is visiting communities that were recently attacked by bandits in the state, and Bogos is one of the 4 communities that was attacked. The community is entirely deserted. Rimi is another community that came under attack, and several houses were burnt during the attack. The State Commissioner of Police, Mr. Aminu Al-Hassan, insists that some of the bandits have been neutralized in recent engagements.
We made everybody to feel that at least they are not rejected. The government, the security agents are fully aware and really touched on what had happened to Rimi last time. And all of you are witnesses that from that day, an onslaught was on those miscreants. And the miscreants did not have time to even stay and make another harassment, which they have done.
Governor Bala Mohammed offers condolences as he reveals the casualty figure from the attack. He also gives an order to the security in the state.
We will no longer allow the bandits to take over our land. You are far away from government. This place is almost 150 or 200 kilometers away from Bauchi town, and this is where I come from. I apologize for our inadequacies and limitations, but certainly it is not deliberate. I own it, but we will do it by the grace of God. We commiserate with you and we sympathize with you. SEMA will come and take care of all the houses that have been burnt, and this money that I said will be given to all the families who lost their loved ones, for the male 1 million naira, for the female 500, and for the children 500, throughout the state by the grace of God.
The government has also promised to send relief materials to those affected in the communities. Hajara Aliyu, Channels Television News.
It's less than 48 hours to the new year here in Nigeria, as some citizens say they're looking forward to the best of 2023, away from 2022, which they've described as a difficult year. According to them, 2022 was especially challenging with rising prices, alarming insecurity, and the war in Ukraine, just to mention a few of the challenges. Channels Television went to the streets of the nation's commercial capital to capture the views of residents' expectations for 2023.
Although 2022 is gradually drawing to an end, the year has offered Nigerians a mix of good and bad experiences.
At the starting of the year, to see food chop gone is not easy for me. I know what I was passing through, being all alone, no mother, no father, nobody at all. I was struggling all alone, so it was not easy for me. But when the year was coming to the end, so things now got easy for me. So I was able to see this small work that I'm doing now to see something to earn a living.
23-year-old Daniel Peters, a wheelbarrow operator, represents the average Nigerian who is determined to succeed when the streets offer him the opportunity. Kidnapping and banditry, the worsening exchange rate between the naira and dollar, and lately, the lingering fuel scarcity are just some of the negatives that have impacted the standard of living and the nation's economy negatively. The overall impression is that 2022 has been a tough year.
In so many areas, especially people that are doing business, it's not working out very well. All this fuel issue, everything. I don't know, there are some families that they cannot afford 3 square meals any longer.
In terms of security, in terms of economic hardship or whatever, everybody, poverty, everything, unemployment, everything joined together.
And then the Boko Haram thing, the insurgents, they don't do anything about it. The police, they are just doing whatever they like. See what happened at Lekki last week.
In spite of all this, Nigerians expect 2023 to be better, especially being the year that will usher in new governments at various levels.
Let's whoever that emerge as the president next year, let the person try and work on our power system. I mean, power supply, then security, and roads, infrastructure.
Our education system in Nigeria is then no war, no job. Then we need light. 2023.
We pray that God will help us to choose a government that will be able to have the good heart of the masses.
Part of the International Monetary Fund staff concluding statement of 2022 Article 4 mission suggests that economic growth for Nigerians in 2023 will continue on the back of the agriculture and services sectors. in spite of the decline in oil production and rising prices of crude oil. Notwithstanding the fears, projections and expectations, the hope is that this will translate into meaningful impact on the living standards of Nigerians.
In part two, after the break, tonight in our review of sectoral performance in 2022, we'll shift our attention to the health sector. That's in a moment. Do join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Governor Nyesom Wike dismisses threat by the PDP leadership against the G5 governors, restates result to announce their next move on the presidential election after due consultations. Governor Kowa says PDP not losing sleep over G5 agenda. Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State orders crackdown on bandits operating in the state following recent killing of 20 residents and 4 communities in Alkaleri local government area. Lagos State government files 1-count charge against ASP Drambi Vandi, suspected to have killed Mrs. Bolanle Rahim. Chief Magistrate orders remand of suspect in Ikoyi Correctional Center until January 30. Former U.S. President Donald Trump's newly released tax returns reveal his business losses, complicated tax setups and tax payments during his years in the White House. Now the wheels of justice appear to have begun to turn in the case of the murder of Lagos-based lawyer Mrs. Bolanle Rahim, who was killed allegedly by a policeman, ASP Drambi Vandi, on Christmas Day. Mr. Vandi appeared before a magistrate court in Yaba area of Lagos, which later ordered that he be remanded at the Ikoyi Correctional Center. This came after the Lagos State Attorney General, Mr. Moyoshere Onigbanjo, today filed a 1-count charge against the defendant. The charge, which was dated December 30, 2022, a copy of which was obtained by our judiciary correspondent, Shalai Sheyele, says that the ASP Drambi Vandi, on the 25th day of December 2022, on Ajar Road along the Lekki Expressway, Lagos, unlawfully killed one Omobolanle Rahim by shooting the deceased in the chest, contrary to Section 223 of the Criminal Law of Lagos State 2015. The Attorney General told Chief Magistrate Adiola Olatubosun that the basis for the remand is to allow the police conclude its investigations into the matter. The magistrates granted the request for remand and ordered that the case file be duplicated and sent to the Director of Public Prosecution, Dr. Jide Martins, for legal advice, and then adjourned to January 30, 2023 to await the legal advice. Now, isolated achievements such as strengthening of infectious disease surveillance have shown potential in Nigeria's healthcare development, but brain drain and inadequate funding are hampering the health sector's response to many health concerns. In continuation of our review of 2022, our correspondent, Mary Alale Yusuf, reports about major events in the health sector in the outgoing year.
The year began with the National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives going on a warning strike. The nurses claimed they were feeling overworked after calls to recruit new nurses went unheeded and after several of their colleagues traveled to take up jobs in other countries. The strike was short-lived in Lagos. Government came to the negotiating table, promising to get more hands. The phenomenon of brain drain did not abate among them and other professionals in the sector. Between 2016 and 2018, 9,000 doctors left Nigeria's shores, but the number increased in 2022.
Brain drain will always happen because people are always wanting to go outside to maybe get a better education or a better postgraduate, or salary is better or whatever. But what we're doing is we have another strategic approach, which is what we call brain gain strategy. We're building a psychiatric hospital, 500-bed psychiatric hospital, and then a 1,000-bed rehabilitation center. We're developing an infectious disease research institute. Now, when you set that up, all these specialties within the system, then our colleagues abroad, doctors, nurses, are saying, hey, there's something to come back home for.
Given the declining number of cases across the country, COVID-19 restrictions were lifted by degrees, culminating in the suspension in December of PCR test requirements for all pre-departures and post-arrivals. Ironically, cases are currently spiking in China, where the pandemic began. Monkeypox had been popping up since 2017 in its most recent reappearance in Nigeria, but in a twist became a hot topic when it was reportedly transported to the UK in early May of 2022 by someone who traveled from Nigeria, and for the first time the disease spread rapidly among non-endemic countries. Other infectious diseases, including Lassa fever and cholera, were also concerns in 2022, claiming more lives than they did in the previous year.
There were disruptions to immunization, both routine and planned campaigns. The world tried to recover, to sort of say, look, essential services should return, but we know that the journey to doing that has been really hard. And now what we are seeing is we are now paying the price for the gaps that occurred there.
It was a moment of pride for Nigeria when the World Health Organization awarded the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, Maturity Level 3, a certificate which grants Nigeria the capacity to use mRNA technology to manufacture vaccines, among other medical preparations. Private sector initiative in Parkinson's disease, cancer, and sickle cell anemia were also undertaken to provide much-needed diversity and availability to often neglected conditions.
With this transplant center in place in Lagos, not only will Nigerians cease to travel out to access a cure for sickle cell disease, but it will in fact be a new dawn for medical tourism into Nigeria.
In July 2022, newly appointed Minister of State for Health, Honorable Ekumankama Joseph Nkama, took over the mantle of leadership from his predecessor, Dr. Olorunimbe Mamura, who went on to become the Minister of Science and Technology. Nigerian doctors have been making their mark on the world stage, and for the first time an African, Dr. Osahon Enabulele of Nigeria, became president of the World Medical Association. The 1.179 trillion naira allocated to health in the proposed 2023 national budget may seem like a big jump from 826.9 billion awarded last year, but is a mere 5.75% of the budget. The ideal of 15% of the nation's budget being allocated to health has not been achieved yet, leaving the sector in want of funds to improve on infrastructure and research, among others. For the sector to transit from reacting to being ready for every health emergency, more must be done in research, infrastructure, recruiting manpower, and capacity building. Mary Alale Yusuf, Channels Television News.
Let's get more perspective on the subject. Joining us live from our Benin City studio in Edo State is the former president of the Nigeria Medical Association and now president of the World Medical Association, Dr. Osahon Enabulele. He joins us, as we said, from our studio in Benin City. Dr. Enabulele, thank you for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Nigerians.
Let's begin with your assessment of the health sector in 2022. How would you rate the Nigerian government?
Oh, yeah.
How would you rate the Nigeria government in 2022, the health sector, its performances, its achievements in 2022?
Well, I think it's still work in progress. I think it's still work in progress. There's still a lot that has to be done to transmogrify the health sector of Nigeria to meet up with what we expect, particularly looking at global, indicators. So yes, a lot more is being done to, of course, create the needed investments in the health sector, but it's still a far cry from where Nigeria should be, noting that Nigeria still remains regarded as a giant of Africa. And if some less endowed countries in Africa are already achieving universal health coverage and Nigeria is not there, that's enough indication to suggest that perhaps we need to tighten our belts, we need to work more altruistically, transparently, and engage those vital ingredients for developing a more robust and resilient health system that everyone will be proud of. That will not make Nigerians travel abroad in search of medical care. But of course, we'll have indigenous capacity, built expertise, and of course, convenient and conducive working environment with supported and motivated health workforce to deliver the best of care that you can find anywhere in the world. And it's possible in Nigeria. So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. One of the things that amazes me at times is that if you look at some of the foundational problems we had at the very beginning, it seems to still be there. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. That is not to say that efforts are not being made to, of course, change the narrative, but the real exercise needs to be done in terms of making very serious political commitments to moving the health sector forward.
Yeah, so we enter the year is still in a pandemic from 2020, the coronavirus pandemic that continued in its second year in 2022. The federal government has finally lifted all of the restrictions for COVID. And then there was also the challenge of monkeypox, which we have already decided is not a pandemic. How would you rate the federal government or the health ministry with its with the way it handled these diseases in 2022? And are we safe enough now to say that, we can actually live with the coronavirus and the other infectious diseases that we've had to deal with this year?
Well, thank you very much. I was recently at the Geneva headquarters of the World Health Organization to interact with the General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. And I think we generally agree that it's not good to advise citizens anywhere in the world to abandon the precautionary measures. Because again, we still have, clear cases in some countries, even now rising in some countries of the world. And that suggests that it's not yet guru. Yes, I know a lot of people are tired of wearing face masks, tired of all these safety precautions, but we must ensure that we do not lose our guards. And that is to say that there's a lot that still needs to be done to make sure that we remain alert, we remain conscious, and of course we open our communication pathways to what is happening in other countries of the world. As to what Nigeria has achieved in terms of pandemic prevention, preparedness, and recovery, there's no doubt that Nigeria, yes, showed very strong commitment towards managing the pandemic that we just had in terms of the troubling times when it started at the very beginning. Yes, there were some lapses at the very beginning, but again, as time went on, those gaps were increasingly closed. But there are still learning points that we need to take forward, especially as the world just now is looking at, firming up the pandemic threat. Right. The pandemic threat seeks to address some of the learning points in the COVID-19 pandemic, especially in the post-COVID pandemic era. So we need to also be part of the global conversations to ensure that those core ingredients, particularly the 14 fundamental ingredients in the pandemic treaty, leverage upon to ensure that we are fundamentally well prepared for any future pandemic that may come up in Nigeria or anywhere in the world. So kudos to the Nigerian government for the way it's, of course, stepped up its game, increasingly in the face of the rising cases of COVID in Nigeria. Right. And of course, the WHO has since applauded the efforts of the Nigerian government in this direction. But it's not yet to hold, like I said. We still have to, of course, make sure that we do much more to build public trust we'll do much more to ensure that we develop our local resource endowments in terms of local production capacity. Still have a lot to do with encouraging, motivating, and stimulating the health workforce, especially in the face of the brain drain that of course, has become a monstrosity. I mean, a very terrible phenomenon that is not being addressed the way we ought to address it. So, in terms of the issue,
I wish we had more time, Dr. Nabulele. I wish we did. You're making really salient points tonight, and I do appreciate them. The viewers as well, I'm sure, also appreciate your thoughts on this. But thank you so much for joining us on the News at 10. We appreciate your analysis, and we hope to see you again in the new year.
I wish Nigerians a very happy New Year in advance. Thank you.
Still ahead on the News at 10, President of the Senate says President Buhari will sign the 2023 appropriation bill on Tuesday, 2 days after the National Assembly passed it. Do join us again. Welcome back, and once more back here in Lagos, where the state government has announced that the CCECC and CRCCIG consortium have been picked as a preferred bidder for the $2.5 billion planned Fourth Mainland Bridge project. Briefing journalists in Lagos, a special advisor on works and infrastructure to the governor, Aramide Adeoye, says the project will be flagged off in the first quarter of next year and is expected to be completed in 2027. According to her, the transport infrastructure will include the construction and the operation of a greenfield tolled road and bridge with a design speed of 120 kilometers per hour.
This is what the proposed 37 kilometers Fourth Mainland Bridge will look like. The project is a proposed public-private partnership transport infrastructure, and the administration of Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has finally gotten a preferred bidder for the project after undergoing a competitive bidding process.
From the 6 bidders on the 31st of May, we had a revised submission date due to the COVID pandemic, and revised submission dates ended 30th of August 2021, of which 6 bidders, only 2 responded and were responsive, and they progressed to RFP stage 2.
The special advisor on works and infrastructure says the projects will traverse the northwest towards the lagoon shoreline of Lagos Ibadan via Ikorodu.
The Third Mainland Bridge was finished in 1990. That was 32 years ago. How come it has taken us this long to come on the Fourth Mainland? So this is coming after extensive route alignment and survey, 16 to be precise. So 16 route selections were carried out before we eventually arrived at this that has minimal number of demolition, that also fits into the resettlement action plan, and then also signed off with the environmental impact assessment certified by the Federal Ministry of Environment. So essentially it's a 37-kilometer long road. There is a road component and there is a lagoon bridge component that is about 4.5 kilometers. You have the option of real estate provisions along the side. It will also cut across, it will take off from Ebamadesoyan all the way over the lagoon, Badore, and then bust out at Sparklight on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway.
And a word of assurance for those whose property will be affected by the Fourth Mainland Bridge.
All of the people will be affected by the construction of the Fourth Mainland Bridge will not be allowed to just go astray. They will be well compensated. They have to show their titles, and once you can show your title to any property along that route, you are going to be compensated. So there should be no fear about that. We have a history of compensating people whose property are taken for public use.
The projected period of completion of the Fourth Mainland Bridge is within 4 years.
Let's head on to our studio in Abuja, where Maupe Ogun Yusuf is waiting to join us with more stories. Hi, Maupe.
Hello, Amarachi. It's good to see you this last Friday of the year 2022. Now, the National Assembly might be on recess, but its principal officers seem to be up and about, as 2 days after they passed the 2023 appropriation bill, the president of the Senate, Senator Ahmed Lawan, says that the president is expected to sign the bill on Tuesday, January the 3rd, 2023. Senator Lawan, who stated this today after a visit to the president in his office, told State House correspondents that he briefed the president on the passage of the appropriation bill, the 2022 supplementary appropriation bill, and the finance bill, among other issues of national interest. Meanwhile, the president has approved the renewal of the appointment of Professor Mojisola Adeyeye as the Director General of the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC. The agency made this known via its official Twitter handle today. It states that the reappointment is for a 5-year final tenure and that the DG, who had initially handed over to an acting DG, Dr. Monica Emujenze, has now reported to the agency's headquarters in Abuja to meet with the agency's directors. In other stories, the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Regulatory Authority is threatening to withdraw all licenses from filling stations which dispense premium motor spirit, also known as petrol, above the official price. Now, this comes after the agency sealed 7 depots across the country, including the AUN filling station in Abuja, which it claimed broke the seal placed on it 2 weeks ago and was dispensing fuel at 290 naira per litre. The executive director in charge of distribution systems, storage and retailing infrastructure, Mr. Obugo Ukoha, who led a team to seal the station, warned that such a breach will no longer be acceptable by the agency, as airing depots will be shut down. And that's all from our Abuja studios. It's back now to you, Amarachi.
Hello and welcome to Business News. Well, that's the sound of the closing gong rung by a renowned filmmaker, Kemi Adetiba, to mark the final day of trading activities for the year 2022 on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. The event, which was graced by top officials of the NGX, as well as patrons and colleagues of the movie producer, Shola Shibowale, had a ceremony during the Chief Executive Officer of the NGX, Temi Popola, explained that the exchange posted an impressive 19.98% year-to-date return, and that's despite facing macroeconomic challenges and volatility. He also gave an outline on what to expect for the coming year. Still on the domestic stock market, it hits 51,000 index points level just shortly after reaching the 50,000 points in the previous session. Let's hear the details from Will Ibong.
Welcome to the Stock Market Report. It's the final trading day of the year and the bull takes the shine. We hit a new level today, and that's the 51K level to end the year. Airtel Africa, the big guy, lifted the market by nearly 10%, and it's one out of the 2 telco giants making an appearance on the final trade of the year today. Now, looking at the activity, it's only deals in the red. However, volume had big wins today. Over 890 million units traded on the floor of the exchange. Look at the gainers for today. We see Airtel right there, smack with a 9.88% gain to close at 1,635 naira. We see Cabot in there and Presco as well. Well, we look at the losers. We got to have some in the market today. We see Royal Exchange, Fitsin, and UAC Nigeria. I guess we got our Santa/end of year rally. Looking forward to the first trading day of 2023. And that's the Stock Market Report. And Will Ibong is back to you.
And That's Business News for tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawodo. It's back to you, Amarachi.
Thanks a lot, Anne, and welcome back. The People's Democratic Party says it will respond to the antics of 5 of its governors who are said to be in political dalliance with the presidential candidates of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Responding to the rumoured meeting between the G5 PDP governors and the presidential candidates of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Tinubu, in London, on the possibility of their teaming up to work for his victory in the forthcoming presidential election, Governor Tamwell says the PDP, as a law-abiding party, will explore lawful avenues to bring any of its erring members to book. Coming up next on the news at 10, former U.S. President Donald Trump's newly released tax returns reveal his business losses, complicated tax setups, and tax payments during his years in the White House. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Newly released tax returns of former U.S. President Donald Trump have shed light on his business losses. The document confirms Trump paid no federal taxes in 2020 and only $750 in 2016 and in 2017, but paid $1 million in 2018. Simon Pusey has more international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Brazil has woken up to its first day without footballing legend Pelé, who has died at the age of 82.
Pelé, the 17-year-old wonder. Pelé always wanting the ball, always calling for it. Game with that centre from Santos, and here comes Pelé.
He was known as the King, winning a record 3 World Cups and was widely considered the greatest footballer of all time. Overnight, Pelé's face shone on buildings across the South American nation, and landmarks were lit up in his memory. Fans started gathering outside Sao Paulo's Albert Einstein Hospital when they heard the news of Pelé's death. Brazil's government has declared 3 days of national mourning. Pelé had been undergoing treatment for colon cancer since 2021. Knowing his condition was worsening, Brazilians had spent weeks reflecting on his life and legacy. The hospital issued a statement confirming his death from multiple organ failure connected to his cancer. Adored around the world, other countries have been paying their respects too. Here, London's Wembley Stadium arch lit up in yellow and green lights. Even NASA paid tribute to the soccer legend.
Pelé was actually bigger than football itself. He was like a world leader. As a child, he gave you hope.
Yeah, it's quite sad that he's gone. You know, we're all going to miss him, and it's sad for sport, and he played a big role in sport. And I know that he never played outside his country. I think he didn't want to go to Europe, and he actually showed us that you don't really have to go. If you play your local soccer, you can become great.
Controversial online influencer Andrew Tate has been detained in Romania as part of a human trafficking and rape investigation. Mr. Tate, who was detained alongside his brother Tristan, had his house raided in the capital Bucharest and was later bundled into a police van. The former kickboxer rose to fame in 2016 when he was removed from the British TV show Big Brother over a video which appeared to show him attacking a woman. He went on to gain notoriety online, with Twitter banning him. Despite social media bans, he gained popularity, particularly among young men, by promoting an ultra-masculine, ultra-luxurious lifestyle, appearing in videos with his fleet of expensive sports cars, private jets, and on expensive holidays. A Myanmar military court has sentenced Aung San Suu Kyi to a further 7 years in prison, taking her overall jail time to 33 years. The country's former democratically elected leader has been under house arrest since the military ousted her government in a coup in February 2021. Since then, she's faced 18 months of trials on 19 charges, which rights groups say are a sham. The UN Secretary Council called for her release last week. On Friday, she was sentenced on the final 5 charges she faced. The court found her guilty of corruption because she had not followed regulations in renting a helicopter for a government minister. Tributes to Dame Vivienne Westwood have poured in following the death of the British fashion icon. She died peacefully and surrounded by her family in London, that's according to her fashion house. The 81-year-old made her name with her controversial punk and new wave styles in the 1970s and went on to dress some of the biggest stars in fashion.
I first saw her when she was sitting in the King's Road, which was the epicenter of the fashion in the 1970s and 80s. And she sat there looking so charming, and then you saw the crazy things she was doing. And it was very British in that way. That in one side, it looked as though she wanted to dress like the Queen of England, and on the other side, she wanted to have her wild side.
And North Koreans have taken part in a dance celebration in the capital Pyongyang to mark the 11th anniversary of Kim Jong-un assuming leadership over the country's military. Footage provided by the North's official news agency, KCNA, which cannot be independently verified, shows hundreds of men and women in suits and traditional dresses, as well as winter jumpers, braving the cold weather and dancing in front of Pyongyang Stadium. KCNA said that similar dance celebrations were held at several locations to celebrate the anniversary. Kim was officially appointed as the Supreme Commander of North Korea's military at a meeting of the Political Bureau of the Central Committee of the ruling Workers' Party on December the 30th, 2011. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon. Welcome to Sports News. Now, Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola has likened the legacy left behind by Pelé to the script of a movie, saying football would not be what it was without the Brazilian soccer legend. Pelé, who won the World Cup as a player in 1958, 1962 and 1970, died on Thursday, aged 82, after a long battle with cancer. And Argentines have put aside their traditional rivalry with Brazil to pay tributes to Pelé. Locals in San Fernando in Buenos Aires province recalled the Brazilian star, praised his technique, and compared him with their own national hero, the late Diego Maradona. And Portugal captain Cristiano Ronaldo has joined Saudi Arabian club Al Nassr until 2025. Ronaldo left Manchester United last month following an explosive television interview in which the forward said he felt betrayed by the club and did not respect their Dutch manager Erik ten Hag. He represented Portugal in Qatar, where he became the first player to score in 5 World Cups after netting a penalty in his side's opening Group H game against Ghana. And that's a wrap on Sports News. I'm Victor Matthias. It's back to Amarachi with the wrap of the news at 10.
Thanks a lot, Victor. And the main news again. Governor Nyesom Wike today dismissed threat by the PDP leadership against the G5 governors as he restated the resolve of the group to announce their next move on the presidential election after due consultations. Meanwhile, the governor of Delta State, Ifeanyi Okowa, said PDP is not losing sleep over the G5 agenda. And that's the news at 10. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Have a great night.